It was supposed to be a fun family night at the fall festival. The air was crisp, filled with the smell of caramel apples, roasted nuts, and hay. I remember gripping the edge of the wagon as the hayride began, the tractor lurching forward over the dirt path. There were decorations along the way, glowing pumpkins, skeletons propped up against trees, and the occasional scarecrow hanging by its neck from an old fence post. I was 12 that year, young enough to still find it thrilling, but old enough to sense when something felt off. The first part of the ride was just silly Halloween fun. Actors jumping out from behind trees, dressed as ghosts and ghouls, trying to get a laugh or a scream out of us. I sat between my mom and dad, huddling close as the other kids on the wagon laughed nervously. It was exactly what you'd expect from a small-town haunted hayride. Nothing too scary, just enough to make you jump. But about halfway through the ride, things started to change. The lights strung up along the path flickered, and the actors that had been so animated before seemed to disappear into the shadows. I noticed the trail becoming narrower, the trees pressing in closer. The tractor's engine sputtered, and the driver muttered something under his breath, glancing around as if we'd taken a wrong turn. That's when the fog rolled in. Thick and white, it wrapped around us like a heavy blanket, making it hard to see anything beyond the wagon. I tightened my grip on the edge of the hay bale, feeling my heart race. Suddenly, the wagon came to a stop. "We're gonna have to walk from here," the driver said flatly. His voice was strange, like he was reading from a script he didn't believe in. The group groaned, but everyone climbed off the wagon, including me and my family. We stood at the edge of the dark woods, the fog swirling around our feet. The driver pointed down the path. "Keep moving forward," he said. "The next wagon will pick you up at the end." We walked in a line, following the path deeper into the forest. The trees creaked in the breeze, and the only sound was the shuffle of feet on gravel. It felt like we were walking forever, and with each step, the air grew colder, heavier. I could feel it pressing down on my skin. Then, somewhere along the way, I lost them. It wasn't like they wandered off without me. One second, I was walking with my parents and the other families, and the next, I was alone. I stopped in my tracks, the fog thickening around me and spun in circles. "Mom, Dad," I called out. My voice sounded small in the endless night, no answer. Panic gripped me as I started walking faster, calling out for them. The path ahead seemed endless, winding deeper and deeper into the woods. The scare actors had vanished, and the decorations from earlier were gone. All that was left was the fog, the trees, and the suffocating silence. And then I saw something moving in the mist. It was just a flicker at first, a shadow slipping between the trees. I stopped, squinting into the fog. For a moment, I thought it was one of the actors just trying to scare the kids. But as the figure stepped closer, I realized it wasn't wearing a costume. It was tall and gaunt, with limbs that looked too long for its body. Its face was pale, almost glowing in the dim light, with hollow eyes that seemed to look right through me. It didn't move like a person, more like a puppet, jerking and twitching as it made its way toward me. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure stopped a few feet away, tilting its head to the side as if studying me. And then, without a sound, it raised one long, bony finger and pointed deeper into the woods. I didn't know what else to do. I ran. The trees blurred around me as I sprinted down the path, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear something moving behind me, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, but every time I looked back, there was nothing there. I ran until my legs burned and my lungs ached, the path twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. The fog seemed to grow thicker with each step, wrapping around me like a cocoon, and the trees pressed closer, their branches reaching out like claws. Just when I thought I couldn't run anymore, I stumbled into a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing was an old, rotting wagon. It looked like it had been abandoned for years, covered in moss and tangled vines. The seats were empty, and the wheels were cracked and broken, but the sight of it gave me hope. Maybe this was where I'd find my family. I climbed onto the wagon, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the seat. For a moment, everything was silent, and then I heard it, a faint whisper, carried on the wind. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but it sounded close, too close. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest, and that's when I saw them. Figures, dozens of them. They stood just at the edge of the clearing, their faces hidden in the shadows. Some were tall and thin, others small and hunched over, but all of them were watching me. And then they started to move. They crept forward, their limbs jerking awkwardly as they crossed the clearing. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. My legs felt like lead, and I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as they got closer and closer, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Just when I thought they were going to reach me, the wagon jerked beneath me. The old wooden wheels groaned as they began to turn, and the wagon lurched forward, dragging me away from the clearing. The figures stopped at the edge of the woods, watching silently as the wagon carried me away. Their hollow eyes burned into my mind, and I knew I would never forget them. The wagon creaked and groaned as it rolled through the forest, the fog swirling around it like a living thing. I clung to the edge of the seat, my knuckles white with fear. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the wagon stopped. I looked around, my heart still racing, and saw them, my parents. They were standing at the edge of the path, looking around frantically. When they saw me, their faces lit up with relief. "There you are," my mom cried, running toward me. "We were so worried." I jumped off the wagon and threw myself into her arms, my whole body shaking with fear and exhaustion. "What happened?" my dad asked, his voice filled with concern. "Where did you go?" I tried to tell them about the fog, the strange figures, and the abandoned wagon, but the words got tangled in my throat. All I could do was shake my head, clutching my mom's hand as if letting go would mean losing her again. We walked back to the main path in silence, the fog slowly lifting as we made our way toward the exit. The sounds of the festival grew louder, and the lights from the stalls shone brightly through the trees. It was as if nothing had ever happened. But as we reached the entrance, I looked back one last time. There, standing just at the edge of the woods, was the tall, gaunt figure. It raised one long, bony finger and pointed toward me, its hollow eyes burning with something I couldn't quite understand, and then it was gone. To this day, I don't know what happened on that hayride. My parents say I must have wandered off and gotten lost in the woods, but I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And every time I pass by those woods, I can't help but wonder if the figures are still there, waiting for the next lost soul to stumble into their domain.